Hi everyone, and welcome to a special bedtime adventure. I'm Michelle, the author of the Rescue Quest series, and tonight we're diving into the first 3 chapters of the first book in the series, which is also called Rescue Quest. This story is packed with adventures, friendship, and epic challenges, all set in the exciting world of Minecraft. It's perfect for winding down while letting your imagination run wild. I wrote this series to encourage kids like my son to explore the joy of reading in a world they already love. I hope you enjoy it too. So snuggle up, grab your favourite blanket, and let's get started with Chapter 1 of Rescue Quest. Chapter 1. It was a typical day for Tom, which meant hiding in the dark and dusty school broom closet. Tom's bum was getting numb, but he didn't dare shift position in case he made a noise and Hunter found him. Dang it, he thought, I needed this lunch break to finish my history assignment. He sighed, wishing he hadn't stayed up so late working on the new design for a spiral piston door in his Minecraft world. He winced, instinctively touching the bruise on his arm where the school bully had given him a savage twist burn yesterday. Being the smallest boy in his year wasn't much fun at the best of times, but being selected for the full focus of Hunter Graham's attention was the pits. Why did I have to lose the gene lottery, he wondered, not for the first time, but his train of thought came to a screeching halt as the sound of footsteps echoed in the corridor outside the door. Tom felt the all-too-familiar sensation of fear creeping up from his toes as the nausea began. He held his breath and tried to shrink himself even smaller, his eyes fixed on the cupboard's brass doorknob. Perhaps I could make a dash for it and run to Mrs. Bevitt's classroom. Unlikely, as Tom knew from experience, Hunter was one of the fastest kids at St. Fortis School, regularly crossing the finish line first in the cross-country runs that Mr. Froggatt, head of games, delighted in forcing them to do, come rain or shine. No, there was no getting away, Tom knew. He'd just have to close his eyes and... Suddenly, the door flew open and Tom let out an oof as his 2 friends, Aarna and Lev, piled in on top of him. Shh, Aarna said as she shoved Lev to the side and shuffled down next to Tom, sending up a cloud of dust. He's just around the corner. I am shushing, Lev whispered, kneeling in his usual spot in the corner and eyeing a cobweb above his head. But it's difficult when you've got your foot on my hair. Oops, sorry. Aarna adjusted her oversized glasses and lifted her foot so that Lev could pull his braids up into a band out of the way. It's just that my mum will kill me if I come home with another pair of broken specs. I think I can hear him, Tom said quietly, waving at the other 2 to be silent and closing his eyes so he could listen. Footsteps echoed again in the corridor, but this time they were slower. Whoever owned them was big and heavy. The 3 friends held their breath as the footsteps slowed and came to a stop outside the door. Aarna waved her hands frantically at Tom to get his attention before stabbing her finger at the brass doorknob. Hold it, she mouthed. Tom slowly and carefully placed his hand around the dull gold-coloured knob and leaned back, putting all his weight behind it. If Hunter pulled hard enough, Tom was sure he'd be able to open the door, but if he just tried to turn the knob, they might be lucky. Bzzz! The sudden noise from Tom's blazer pocket made him almost jump out of his skin. Aarna and Lev's eyes widened in alarm as the phone's vibrations bounced off the walls in the small space. Tom scrabbled in his pocket with his free hand and pulled out the phone, trying desperately to turn it off. Glancing at the screen at the missed call, he realised it was his dad. Tom sighed. His dad didn't wear a watch and was a rubbish timekeeper, so it wasn't unusual for him to try to call Tom while he was at school. He couldn't have picked a worse time today. Tom wondered briefly why he might have been calling until his nerves were almost wrecked a second time by the sound of the school bell ringing for the last lesson of the day. The sounds outside the closet bloomed into a cacophony of noise as children piled in from the playground. The 3 friends waited a few moments, hoping that Hunter had gone to class with the rest of the students. Tom cautiously opened the door and peered out. A few children were hurrying along the corridor towards their classrooms, but the coast seemed clear. Tom let out a shaky breath, and Aarna and Lev looked at each other, sighing with relief. "Phew, we made it," Aarna said. "Yeah, another break time in the cupboard," Tom replied sadly, "and now we're going to be late for history." "Did you finish your homework?" Lev asked, shifting his body to relieve the pins and needles in his feet. It was a toughie. Tom's heart sunk even further. He shook his head and bit his lip. There was nothing he could do about it now. He unfolded himself from his cramped position, opened the door cautiously and checked the coast was clear before stepping out into the light. Chapter 2. Tom kicked at a stone on the pavement as he, Aarna and Lev walked home together after school. "We have to tell someone," Aarna said, pushing her thick glasses up her nose for the 50th time that day. "What about Mrs. Bevitt?" replied Lev. "She won't do anything," replied Aarna. "Remember what happened when Hunter stole Chelsea's packed lunch?" The others nodded. "Nothing," Aarna continued. "They just gave Chelsea some money to buy something at the canteen. It's like they don't care." "Well, we've got to do something," Lev complained. "I'm sick of hiding, and I'm sick of having my hair pulled out." The boy's voice cracked on the last word, and the other two deliberately didn't look him in the face. No one wants to be seen crying when you're 11 years old. "Perhaps we could all take up martial arts and go all wong on him," Aarna said, shifting her rucksack from one arm to the other so she could chop the air with her hands. "What do you mean, go wrong on him?" Lev asked. "Not wrong, you doofus. Wong. You know, Doctor Strange's valet in the Marvel films. He's a top fighter. No one messes with him." Aarna rolled her eyes at her friends. Lev just shrugged. "I'm more into Matrix films. Neo could kick Hunter's butt, that's for sure," he said, sniffing. "What do you think, Tom?" Aarna asked. What? Sorry," Tom replied, realising he hadn't really been listening to what his friends had been saying. "Are you all right?" Aarna asked. "That was some lecture Dr. Sapor gave you about your homework." Tom shrugged. "Nah, don't be fooled," Lev said before turning to Tom. "Where are you this time?" he asked, knowing exactly where Tom's mind had been. Inside his favourite game, Minecraft. "I was just trying to figure out how to make my spiral piston door with fewer blocks," Tom replied. "I watched someone doing it in 125 blocks on YouTube this morning, but I reckon I can beat that." "You and your Minecraft," laughed Lev. "Is there anything else you think about?" "Not really," Tom grinned, reflecting that Minecraft was the perfect place to escape to. There were no bullies and no homework. Although today he'd also been wondering about why his dad had rung earlier. He hoped he'd remember that he had to come home early so that his mum could go on her special trip with Aunt Wendy that afternoon. Tom had overheard his parents discussing the weekend trip, how his mum's younger sister had broken up with her boyfriend and needed something called girl time, whatever that meant. His friends brought him back from his thoughts as they both stopped in their tracks. "Isn't that Hunter?" Aarna said, tipping her chin towards a man and boy on the other side of the road from them. Tom recognised Hunter straight away. He was the biggest boy in Mrs. Bevitt's class, with a square chin, sandy blonde hair and a black baseball cap that he wore backwards at break time and lunchtime, despite it being against the school rules. Normally, Hunter stood tall with his shoulders back, arms crossed, flexing his biceps and staring down anyone who came near him. But now his shoulders slumped and his head hung. Tom recognised that posture straight away. It was how he carried himself whenever Hunter was bullying him. "Yeah, and that's his uncle, I think," Lev continued. "Looks like he's really telling him off." "I heard his uncle is looking after him," Aarna said. "Not sure why, though." The man was tall and thin, with floppy blonde hair and a faint grey stubble across his chin and upper lip as though he hadn't shaved that morning. His clothes were monochrome with no warmth, a charcoal grey suit with a matching waistcoat, white shirt and a dark grey tie. His face was similarly ashen and deep lines etched malice into his forehead and around his mouth. It was a face well used to frowning. He was holding Hunter's class book in one hand and pointing at Hunter with the other, and while the friends couldn't hear what he was saying from where he was standing, he was clearly angry. It surprised Tom to see Hunter wipe his face with the back of his hand as if he was rubbing away a tear. But just at that moment, Hunter looked over at Tom and his face changed in a heartbeat as he narrowed his eyes and scowled. Tom knew that expression all too well and looked away quickly, shuddering. "Come on, let's go," he said to his friends, hurrying on. "Whatever's going on, we shouldn't get involved." Lev followed Tom, but Aarna hung back for a moment, watching as Hunter's uncle threw the textbook on the floor in front of him and stormed off down the street. Hunter bent to pick the book up and cradled it in his hands like a small, wounded animal. Aarna felt uncomfortable watching him and ran to catch up with her friends. Lev sighed. "We really should come up with a plan to stand up for ourselves, you know," he said. Well, I am fed up of being picked on," agreed Aarna. "And my mum really will go mad if I come home with another pair of broken glasses." Tom knew Hunter had broken 2 pairs of his friend's thick glasses already. The last time he'd stomped on them with his foot so that Aarna had to change places with Charlotte at the front of the class just to see the board for the rest of that day's lessons. "But perhaps there's something else going on with him," she continued, glancing back to see Hunter, but the street was empty. "What's going on is that he's a bully. Something's got to change, that's for sure," replied Lev. "Perhaps we should tell one of the teachers after all." Tom felt the same as his friends and wished he felt brave enough to stand up to Hunter. He dreamed about it over and over, different scenarios, but always the same ending, with Tom winning and Hunter backing down, finally leaving them all alone. But he knew he wasn't the hero of his dreams. He knew because he'd been here before. "Look," he said, "I know it seems like the right thing to do, but believe me, it's worse to be a snitch. Everyone hated me at Westdale when I told on Trevor. They made my life hell." Tom thought back to his old school, Westdale High, where he'd been until the beginning of the year. His stomach churned as he remembered being shoved into cupboards, punched in the corridor, and having his things put on top of lockers where he couldn't reach them. He'd lost count of the times he'd been late for lessons because he had to get the school caretaker to help him get his books down. Touching his shoulder absently, he pictured the dark purple bruise from the day his nemesis, Trevor, had finally gone too far. Scared but desperate, Tom had gone to the school headmaster and reported the bullying. It was the hardest thing he'd ever done. But nothing improved. Instead, the bullying got worse as Trevor's friends began targeting Tom for being a snitch and a tattletale. When the other kids in his year joined in, the isolation and name-calling sent Tom into deep anxiety. He dreaded school each day. His grades tanked, and then his stomach aches began. In the end, his parents had pulled him out of Westdale to make a fresh start at St Fortis, where he'd been one of the new joiners along with Aarna and Lev. It was still a few years until his exams began in earnest, so it seemed the best time to move. The experience had left scars, though, and Tom worried the same backlash would happen if he spoke up about Hunter. It was easier to stay silent, even as the bully tormented him and his new friends. Besides, there was nothing he could do about it anyway. Being so small would always make him an easy target. He just had to accept that. The 3 of them walked in silence for a while, each thinking their own thoughts. At least it's the weekend tomorrow, Tom thought. 2 whole days of Minecrafting, once homework and chores are done, of course. And with just his dad and his little sister Alice in the house, there would be plenty of time for playing. His mum just didn't get Minecraft. Tom smiled as he pictured Alice's face when he showed her how to use shulker boxes the next day. She loved the way the tops swiveled to reveal their contents. "Believe me, nothing ever changes," Tom said to his friends as he waved goodbye and turned into the driveway of his house. "See you Monday." But he couldn't have been more wrong. Chapter 3. Meanwhile in the city. "This place is huge." Tom's Uncle Martin gazed around the Game Developers Conference. The walls of the conference hall towered over him, reaching up towards the ceiling like giant monoliths. The huge space was filled with the chatter of excited gamers, the flashing lights of various displays, and the hum of machines. Uncle Martin felt a rush of anticipation. This was the first time he and Tom's father, John, had attended as developers with a game to sell, and he could hardly believe he was here. He wandered through the crowds, taking in the sights and sounds of the event. He smiled as he watched a group of people gathered around a booth, cheering and clapping, a player completing a difficult level on a brand new game. Then, in another corner of the room, he spotted a young woman giving a presentation about a personal AI game assistant that selected games for you to play based on your personality type, her voice carrying over the noise of the crowd. Uncle Martin felt a thrill of inspiration. He and John had been working on their own game for months, and they'd come to the conference hoping to sell it to Big Bad Games Limited, the coolest new gaming company at the show. They had a meeting booked with them in 20 minutes at the networking centre, just a few steps away from where he was now. As he wandered between the stands, killing time, Uncle Martin's attention was drawn to a booth displaying a virtual reality headset. He'd never tried one for himself. Intrigued, he stepped closer and picked it up. A young man wearing a "Can I help you?" badge approached him. "Are you interested in trying out?" he asked. "Another fellow has already taken the inside booth, but you're welcome to have a go out here." "I don't have time right now, thanks, but I'll pop back later on," he replied, thinking that it would be a great way for him and John to blow off some steam after the stress of the meeting. But of course, John wasn't there. He was never where he was supposed to be when he was supposed to be there. Uncle Martin thanked the man and looked at his watch for the 15th time. "John, where are you?" he breathed. John was never a good timekeeper even as a child, Martin remembered. Always late for lessons and daydreaming in class. It was a wonder he made it through university at all. It helped that he was a whiz at computers, but it was hard running a business with him. The irony was that when he'd met Eleanor, his complete opposite in personality and timekeeping, they'd felt madly in love. I guess opposites really do attract, he'd thought at the time. But now all he could think about was the meeting that they were going to be late for and how he was probably going to have to manage on his own. And that's the first 3 chapters of Rescue Quest. I'll see you next time for more Minecraft adventures with Tom, Aarna and Lev. Like, comment and subscribe so you don't miss out. Bye for now.